Hello and welcome to a video by me. My name is Ed, and this is a Skyrim mod called Project Parallax that I'm going to be talking about today. And it's a mod that I found that should really get more attention than I've seen that it has so far. If you don't know what parallax mapping is, well, first off I should probably say that there's a texture mod. But not in the traditional sense. It doesn't replace any of the textures, it just adds parallax mapping to the textures, which, if I stand a bit back, you can see that this wall sort of looks like each of the rocks is a bit three-dimensional. It's sticking out of the wall, which in the vanilla game, it does not happen, and in fact, I'm actually using the version of this mod that works with Skyrim HD 2K textures full, which is what I use. And it really adds a nice illusion of depth to the textures. Of course, it's not adding polygons to the model, but it makes it look almost as good as that. And you can see it with the road here, right here. It makes it look like the rocks are sticking out outside of the road instead of just one flat texture. Right here is really noticeable. This looks really nice. It looks actually bumpy instead of flat like in the vanilla game. So yeah, and another good thing about it is that it has almost no performance drop when you're using it. It does use the Enb mod by Boris, and I'm not going to even try to butcher his last name. And I'm thinking that's what discourages most people from using it. But if you disable all of the things in the Enb mod, which you can do by hitting Shift-Enter. In fact, I even have... let me scroll down here a bit. If you put on Use Original Post-Processing and Use Original Objects Processing, and then disable everything else, it has 0 performance drop using the Enb. And when you put on the Parallax project, I haven't noticed maybe 5 FPS drop max, which is the amount you would get using realistic lighting overhaul or Climates of Tamriel. So it's definitely a way to improve your visuals without sacrificing performance very much. Oh, and when you're using the Enb mod, one thing you may want to do that has a very little performance drop as well is check these off, use original post-processing, use original object processing, but then enable ambient occlusion and enable detailed shadows. So let me turn these off. This is what this area normally looks like, which is good and all, but just take a look at it, then watch what happens when I enable detailed shadows and ambient occlusion. As you can see, I had my frame rate counter on. I'm only losing about 5 frames per second enabling that. Ambient occlusion and detailed shadows. But it definitely makes the world look a lot better. One thing to notice with ambient occlusion, though, at least that I've found, is that if you're someone who has a Z-fighting problem, like I do, it definitely makes it more noticeable, and I even have some fixes on for it. And it still looks pretty bad, but it's livable. And the Z-fighting is something that doesn't happen with anyone. With many people, actually, in fact. I have a crossfire setup, and that's probably one of the reasons it happens. So yeah, don't worry about that. It will almost certainly not happen to the extent that it's happening there in your game. So let me go into Whiterun. This is inside the city itself. Also has a huge improvement. What's parallax mapped is roads and other stuff by the roads, and most of the major holds. Off the top of my head, I know that Whiterun, Solitude, Markarth, Windhelm, they're all, and probably there's a few others. So as you can see here, I don't know if you can see it because of the YouTube video, but the road looks, the actual rocks that are textured into the road actually look like there are rocks there, that it's not just one flat thing. Let me see, actually no, disabling Enb doesn't get rid of the parallax mapping, but so I can't show you without restarting my game what it looks like, but I will probably do another video. It will be in the same video, but I'll just record another video of me showing you this area without the parallax mapping, so you can see the difference that makes. And you can see the rocks on this wall right here definitely look more defined. Another thing that I know is mapped that I can't really show you is these roofs. Like, these shingles look like they're not just one flat texture. This looks really good right there. These pieces of wood are as well. So yeah, like if you look at this wall, there's another really good example. It looks like all these bricks are actually separate, defined beings, for lack of a better term, instead of one solid texture. What I'm probably going to do now, after I show you what it looks like without Project Parallax on, is I will probably open up, what's it called, Unigine Heaven, which has really good parallax mapping, really defined, so I can show you yet again what parallax mapping actually is. Okay, and I'm back, and this is the same area that I was at before, without Project Parallax on. As you can see, it just looks like one flat texture again. And I was standing here before, I think I was getting about 105 frames per second. And now I'm getting 108. I may have even been getting higher. I wasn't really looking at it, but barely a noticeable performance hit for using the parallax mapping. As you can see, the road looks far worse than how it used to look. Yeah, the road looks much more flat than it did before, as does this wall. Looking at this wall here, you can see it looks much more flat. And over here, you remember, was a really good example of the parallax mapping. It doesn't look quite as good. And as I said, I would be showing Unigine Heaven, which I can't walk up the steps in. That's just phenomenal. And depth of field is working fabulously. As you can see, there's a pretty extreme example. Now that I'm thinking, this is actually tessellation. This isn't even parallax mapping, but similar thing. Well, not really at all, but similar effect. Hey, at least it looks nice. You know what's sad? There's times in Skyrim that I'm walking around that I'm not getting 70 frames per second.